The following is brought to you by the Starfleet Podcast Network, SPN, The Spin.
BigJ's beef!
Honey, I'm looking at you on the phone. Are you doing laundry?
I am doing laundry.
Okay, so no one can see you doing laundry because I'm looking at you on my phone, my screen, and looking at my computer. You have to do laundry right now. Now, okay, so everyone watching or listening, you're probably wondering, why is Nico doing laundry right now when we're trying to talk about Star Trek? And my response to that would be, and I'm sure hers would too, it doesn't matter. All right. So did you at least watch this most recent episode, Star Trek Picard?
You know what? I actually went back and watched that first episode. So I was a good student there.
Okay.
And yeah. So, and then after that, I went in and I went ahead and watched the new one.
Okay. So we're going to talk.
I even went back and watched like 3 of the first season, but
Ooh.
you know.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. We're going to talk about Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 2, titled Disengage. So we're going to talk about Jack Crusher because that's the big topic for this episode. So, honey, I want to throw out some numbers here. I've got to do some math. You've got to help me out with this, okay? So just give a kind of a quick overview. So Jack Crusher, as we found out in the last episode, in episode 1, is Beverly Crusher's son. And we find out in this episode, a spoiler alert, obviously there are going to be spoilers. We're talking about the freaking episode. We find out that Jack Crusher is Jean-Luc Picard's son. So Picard and Beverly are the parents. Follow me so far?
Yep.
All right. So this is where I have a problem. This is my beef on this. First, doing the whole illegitimate child thing, which I guess it's kind of like, why did the plot need that? I'm not so sure that it did. I guess to give it more of a personal angle for Picard to have some stake in, maybe.
Well, okay, wait a minute. Go back to, here's the first thing that popped into my head. And
okay.
Like I said, I didn't watch that first episode. Then when I watched it earlier today, I was picking up some hints of, I kind of like knew. Then I was counting, and there actually was like 3 veiled hints from Riker to Picard that, hey, like, dude, are you not picking up that this is your son? So this all goes back to in the Star Trek movie and throughout the original series that Captain James T. Kirk had this love of his life, and she went off. She was some scientist.
Yep.
And so change. And now Beverly is this medical person. So obviously the two have like really high up their careers, but how are they going to make this work? Because they're both, you know, like they're just not in this situation where they can settle down and be parents. But this was the first thing that hit me in the head, was that James T. Kirk had this long lost son who ended up being in his early 20s, mid 20s, when he met again with the woman that he hadn't seen for all these years and didn't have contact with. And I'm like, why are they running the same storyline again? You know, so I was a little disappointed with that. Because it was like, you know, like I grew up on original Star Trek. Like when it was aired on the original episodes on TV, I used to lay down on the floor with my dad, and this was the thing that we did. So, you know, like something like that was a huge, huge thing out of the original. And I'm like, why are they picking up and just, so was that what it was? Are they just repeating that whole storyline there? Now,
so
the other problem I have
I'm sorry, I thought you were like actually asking me. It was a rhetorical question. Sorry, go ahead.
The other problem I have with that is the fact that at first when you hear Picard talking about the relationship, he makes it sound like it was an impossible relationship between him and Beverly. like it was bad and there was all this drama and they just couldn't do it and they weren't compatible. Well, then when we come and actually, like he gets there and she's injured, unconscious, and, he's all about, oh, I've got to rescue Beverly and save her through that whole part, which of course she's completely unaware. So his tune of how he is portraying his feelings and the relationship completely is different than what he had just spoken about it, which, I'll say a lot of times that, happens with the way people act and stuff. But then when you see her on board and she's looking at him, there's no communication other than some eye contact where he makes the realization that it's his son. But you also see that the link that they had and the connection that they had of this love story is still very, very much there. So, yeah, like, I don't know. There's some of that. And I'm kind of a little confused because I've missed out on some stuff. The way that before he left with the other woman, that's the Romulan woman, if that's his wife or something. But so now there's kind of this, like, I don't know, like almost, is there cheating and an affair going on kind of thing set up, a love triangle here? I'm having issues with that too. And then put on top of that, we have this illegitimate child. Why would she not have told him? I don't like that storyline. Because that's, for the most part, that's not reality. Women tell the men, and it's the men, like,
no,
I'm just speaking,
they don't. And
I'm saying for the most part, for the most part, in general, most women will tell the men, I'm pregnant, it's your kid, and then we have issues. And the man is like, it's not mine, and he's off. And I could see where, like, I don't remember in the original. I mean, I know in the original story with James T. Kirk and his woman, she was this huge
scientist
brain in the science world, and she had business to take care of. Now, Beverly Crusher, completely different thing. She's just a medical officer. I don't know. We have no idea why she went and ran and hid. And her portrayal of her character of going from just this medical sweet demure woman to this rogue, badass military warrior woman who's, like standing next to her son and has raised her son this way I don't know. I mean, I know it's 20 years that they're saying has passed, but that's a pretty far-fetched thing too, from everything that they had portrayed her as before. But then throw in there, besides the fact that this son has never had a father and has had to rely on the survival of his mother to teach him. And he's kind of this, I don't know. He's not a great character. Like, his choices and everything else, maybe not completely about survival. He's obviously made some choices. Now he talks about the two of them doing things to benefit kind of the greater good, and it goes against what other people might do. But yet you see him doing bribery, and he's like, well, maybe I killed somebody. I don't know. That dude might still be alive. Like, the things that we're seeing come out of his mouth in his excuses of, well, whatever I've done is fine. Like, I don't know, being a parent, and I'm thinking on either side of, especially if you were that dad or that mom who hadn't seen that kid for that long and is raised by this other parent, and you're like, oh my gosh, this person, like, I don't know. I felt like just this huge stab for Picard, because it's like, dude, your son is a mess, but it's not just a mess by survival instincts. This is choices. This is who he is, so there was so much in this one episode to unpack all at once. I'm like, could they have kind of skewed it down just a little bit? Because it was just like kind of over the top. So I just didn't even know where to begin with all that.
So to fill in a little bit, going to flesh out what you talked about, and you're absolutely right in regards to James T. Kirk and Carol Marcus. Carol Marcus was the name of. Carol.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
So they had a child, and now Kirk knew of David, his son. How long he was involved, we don't really know, but we do know that Carol did not want him. There were two different worlds that David was going to possibly be exposed to. Her world, which was the safer, scientific kind of world, and Kirk, very career oriented. I mean, he was Starfleet through and through. So he was going to be, as she said, hopping the galaxy. And I mean, for God's sakes, Kirk was a captain of a starship by the time he was 26. So you know that he's very much career oriented. Now, he was asked to not be involved, which he honored that request. However, he did know that he had a child. So he knew. Now you come to Picard, and here are some numbers that I want to throw out to you, because these numbers I'm going to give will make some of what I'm talking about make a little bit more sense. All right. So did a little research here because I was a little bit suspect of the age of Beverly during these events. So Beverly Crusher was born in the year 2324. Okay. And Star Trek Nemesis, which was the last time that we had seen her, takes place in 2379. And she was 55 years old. So let's assume that the writers didn't try to say that this child was born somewhere behind the scenes any sooner than this movie. So let's just assume they're not going to go there. I would think that they wouldn't, and there's really no need to. Okay, so and Beverly ghosted everyone in the year 2381 because this season of Picard takes place in 2401. And as you remember, Picard had mentioned that Beverly hadn't spoke to anyone in 20 years. So going by this math, Jack Crusher is anywhere from, at max, 22 years old, because that's the amount of time between Nemesis and Picard season 3. Possibly as young as 20, but somewhere in the 22 to 20 years old. I'm going to say probably more along the 22. With the looks that were exchanged on the bridge of the Titan, it's tough to say. And you may be able to help me out here, but do you think that Picard, did he know that Beverly was pregnant at least before she ghosted everyone? Or is this kind of a complete surprise to him and he only suspected it when he saw Jack, I guess saw that family resemblance, which is certainly there. And, but here's the thing that bothers me. And Nacho brought this up earlier. British accent is not biological. Why the hell does he have a British accent? That bothers the hell out of me. But anyway, so what's your take on that? First, and there's one thing I've got to point out that's a big flaw of this whole plot line. But do you think that he had any idea that he got her pregnant before she just dropped off the face of the galaxy?
No. With all the number of times that we saw Will Riker trying to kind of get him to see what Will was seeing right in front of him. I don't think he would have had any clue. And he even said in the end of the first episode, and again in this episode, like he didn't know why she had stopped talking to everybody. Like she just went radio silent, and he's like, I have no idea. Now, we do know that from his comments that he said they were having difficulty, managing a relationship. So at that point, when
you know why they're having difficulty? The whole relationship is flawed because Beverly's husband, Jack Crusher, was an officer on the Stargazer where Picard was in command, and Jack Crusher was killed while serving on the Stargazer under Picard's command. And so you have this relationship between Picard and Beverly Crusher that has always kind of, well, not always, but has sort of been hinted at and sitting there in the background several times during the run of Next Generation. And also in the books, if you read any of the books, there was definitely storylines that included he and Beverly having a child. But of course, the books aren't canon. So that's the part that kind of weirds me out is you served on a ship with this guy. He died. And at some point here, 20 some years later, when you're on the Enterprise D, you have at some point this flirtation or relationship with this man's wife.
Yeah, but
widow? She
was a widow. Okay, so you got to remember.
I'm not saying that widows can't meet someone and date again, but
no. But in the original TV series with the Next Generation, Picard always kind of looked out for Beverly. Like she was someone that he felt needed protecting. And so, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether I want to say he had some guilt over her husband dying and Wesley Crusher not having a father. So he stepped into that role of, making sure that this now widowed single mother had, like this extra kind of person looking out for her. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we see this relationship start as like a protective thing. And then they became friends, and then it kind of went into this romance. So there was a natural building through all of the previous series and episodes of, this wasn't something that, oh, wow, here's this woman and she's a redhead and she's hot and I'm just, going to get with her. I mean,
I got me a hot redhead.
Yeah, that was not how anything was portrayed between them. So, I mean, the genuine relationship is there. It built over time, and they were friends and colleagues and all that stuff. And and he was kind of the pseudo father to Wesley.
He's not good with relationships or children, so that's.
But here's the thing: being one of those people, James T. Kirk, Captain Picard, being one of these huge, larger than life characters, like they're not going to have typical, hey, I want to get married, have kids, settle down, right. I just go to my normal job. I mean, so any relationship is going to be difficult for them. I mean, if we look at Riker and
Deanna.
Why is my brain broken?
Your brain's broken. It's the brain damage, like we talked about before.
Deanna, it's in there. I can see her in my head. I got the word in there. Now I got it out. Yeah, I mean, like she had a really important job as far as like this liaison on the ship. So, I mean, you're getting women also who have a much higher stake in the thing. This isn't just like, oh, hey, I went down to like the food service cafeteria and, I met this woman down there and, she doesn't have any duties that are like, I mean, these women are like on away teams. They're liaisons between other cultures. I mean, these are strong women. So when you put these men that have larger than life hero kind of status along with another woman who in their own right is kind of independent and strong, you're going to get like this difficulty with just a typical relationship.
Right. I have a hard time with the relationship with the podcasting. This is serious podcasting business. And I've got you bothering me all the time about my podcasting is very important, my computer work, my job, my hobbies, my video gaming, all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's number one, isn't it?
No. So here's another thing I need you to help me out with, because I did a little research on all of this. And there was some talk online, of course. This was the big topic, was Jack Crusher. The other thing was her age and whether. Old. Yeah. So as I mentioned,
he should have looked.
What's that?
I said, I think that they dyed her hair, or I don't know if that's her natural hair, but she looks older than, I don't know. They made her look more matronly, old woman, spinster kind of thing than I think she should look.
Well, but here's the thing. So she is 77 years old. Beverly Crusher is 77 right now in the events of this season. So,
okay. So maybe so she really is. Okay.
And like I mentioned before, if we go and say for sure, Jack Crusher was not born at any point before the events of Nemesis, there's no way I'm buying that. That's not happening. So she was 55 at the youngest. She was 55 when she had him. So there was a 2-year period. There's a possible 2-year period between having him and then going silent. All right. And I'm sure this is going to be cleared up in future episodes, but let me read this to you. This is something I looked up online. And I'm sure you'll have to excuse me for my ignorance on this. I don't know a whole lot on the topic of menopause, but so the menopausal transition most often begins between ages 45 and 55. Oh, honey, you're screwed.
Well, we already started that, so.
Yes. What's this we stuff? You started it. It's not like I'm not gaining pregnancy weight with you. We're not both going through menopause.
Well,
easy. The next thing you say. All right. So let me keep going. I can't believe you're even hinting at. It usually lasts about 7 years, but can be as long as 14 years. The duration.
I didn't sign up for that.
Huh?
I didn't sign up for that.
Tough. The duration can depend on lifestyle factors such as smoking, age it begins, and race and ethnicity. Pregnancy is not possible during or after menopause. Okay, so tell me if I'm wrong, but once we get to Nemesis, Beverly is 55. Would it be safe to say that could she have been premenopausal at that age? Is that, and let's also factor in 24th century medicine. Now, I know that you can't really have that much of an effect on biology. It's probably not safe to, but is it outside the realm of possibility that by 55, she still hadn't quite gotten it yet? Because it says here, it begins between 45 and 55. So could it have started at 55 or?
Well, I think, okay, so I don't know if we're skewing something, because we're talking about like our medical care and our stuff that we have now and comparing it to, I'm going to say what they have is much more advanced. So to assume that their biology is running, like exactly the same. I mean, I would think that probably, there's cultures where, they're in much better health than what we are in America. And
absolutely. So, that's a low bar.
So we do see a lot of older women being able to, because their health is different and their body system isn't, it's not like they're in that shutdown process, kind of like how we are, because we don't take care of ourselves. So, I'm saying with the futuristic kind of medicine, maybe the way that the bodies have, like, think about way back in the 1800s, people didn't live that long. Well,
Right.
so think about that. Maybe they're living longer. They have better health over the duration of their life. Beverly obviously is part of Starfleet. So she's going to be getting like, I know we haven't seen her for 20 years, but I'm going to say even while she was within that, people that are in the military, they're getting much better health care just as a part of being active duty, because they've got to be kept fit, seen as fit, all of that. So I don't know that necessarily this would be outside the realm of possibility for her.
Really?
When you look at all those factors right there, if it was just me talking about me, I'd say, oh no, for sure, like somebody in my age range and, all that, you would definitely be having to actively try, to be, using, fertility services or whatever, that would be much more likely. But, seeing as we're talking about someone who obviously wasn't just a person on some world, even if she's been rogue for a while and, not had all of this, her health prior to that, I would say would have a big impact.
Well, and so here's the other thing that was a topic as well, is that, okay, let's just say we give you that it is certainly possible that in that we've got that 2-year time span to play with between the events of Nemesis and when she went dark. It was about 2 years there. So she was between 55 and 57 in that time. So you're saying that, and I get it. I can go with what you're saying. It's certainly possible because, like you said, even in our time right now, people are living longer. There's all kinds of factors. Puberty is starting sooner, and things like that. But now here's the thing, and I want to say, okay, so Picard was born in 2305. Okay, so he is how much older than Beverly? 5, 15, 20, 19 years.
That doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, I know it doesn't matter. I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that part. Okay. So when Beverly was between 55 and 57, let me get out my calculator here. Picard was between 74 and 76. So here's a couple things that once you start combining these is where I start kind of having a little bit of a problem. Sure, you could kind of say it's possible that a woman in the 24th century at her age could get pregnant. The thing is that men there's an age, there's a cutoff. Well, I don't know if cutoff is the right word, but basically women have a cutoff as to when they can't get pregnant. And that's once menopause hits, that's it. And for men, there's an age as well where their ability to produce a sperm with the mobility to achieve pregnancy is certainly decreased quite a bit. So you've got two people here that are in at an age where there certainly needs to be a good deal of medical assistance that goes into producing a child.
So you're saying that Picard was like in his 70s when you think this happened?
Like mid 70s, yeah, because he's 19 years older than Beverly. And so when she was between we're talking about that between 55 and 57 years old, which is that the 2-year span between Nemesis and when she ghosted. That was then. And so, damn it, I just closed out my calculator. Let me pull it up again. So when she was 55, he was 74.
Which he could still father a child then. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But the thing is that we're talking that there would have to be fertility treatment, IVF, something. No, I'm not believing that they hooked up and she just got pregnant, like, old fashioned with no help or treatments or whatever. There had to be a concerted effort. She was
a doctor, though. So she could have been doing all that stuff herself, right? Okay.
But that's the thing. So you agree that this pregnancy was not an accident. Are we going to say it's not an accident or that it was? There's no way it was.
Well, I don't know.
How?
I mean, what would be the purpose of her having a child that was like not just unexpectedly naturally conceived? I don't know. I don't see that.
You know what I've got to ask is, what is it with you baby mamas? This is what I need to know.
I'm not your baby mama.
Y'all go and have these kids and then don't want us around. You don't want the kid living our lives where we're driving fast cars and fast starships, hiding these pregnancies and these kids, questionable things. Yeah, I bet you she told him she was on birth control and wasn't. And then she went and got knocked up.
Okay, so I'm still wondering. I mean, I get like the storyline with how she was basically hiding him because possibly some of the actions that we talked about before, like stealing things, the murder and all that. But I don't know. I'm
either Beverly hid this child for 2 years from Picard. Either she hid him for 2 years, or as soon as she found out she was pregnant, she split. She bolted. All right, let's hear
it. So I don't know currently where we're at with, like, I told you I went back and started watching like the very first season.
Right.
We were talking about like we had Data before, we then have his daughters. And then we have like this, where like the synthetics basically, I don't know, take over and are basically trying to kill the humans. So I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, if there's something genetically modified with Jack. I mean,
yes,
why
it's the British accent
after him? And so again, I mean, it kind of makes me sick a little bit because I don't think we now get any shows where we don't talk about pandemics, but they talk about where they're trying to, take this stuff because they have this pandemic with a flu. So is he in some way genetically modified and he's not going to get sick or whatever else?
Let's not. Oh God, please don't go there.
So she I mean, I don't know. She's a scientist.
Let's not throw in a bastard child and also be an augment. That's too much. I'm not doing it.
It's kind of like, let's clone a baby. I mean, Picard had some good qualities in there. Why not?
But look at the ethics there. So what are the ethics of her cloning? Hey, you know what happened? Oh, so she got the idea to clone him after Shinzon, because we had to deal with the clone in Nemesis, right? The clone of Picard was Shinzon, who's became the praetor of Romulus.
Maybe she used that sample,
honey,
for the pregnancy.
No. I will stop watching Star Trek if that is the case. Did you hear what you just said?
Great storyline.
No. It would be that'd be. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, like,
you are crazy.
So go back to Dr. Is it Gennady? in the first season?
Girardi. Yeah.
Okay. So here we have this woman that's she says we're almost to the point of creating synthetics that like don't even know that they're robots and they look and feel and act like human beings. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe is there the possibility there with Jack too?
No.
I mean, I don't know. Like Beverly is supposed to be this really smart, not just a typical doctor kind of person. So she had access through Starfleet to money, research, all this stuff. I mean, I don't know. Who knows why and when and where she decided to go rogue. But I mean, there's something here that isn't making sense to me.
Yeah, and we're going to find out more, I'm sure. But that was the main thing in this episode I wanted to pick your brain on was just the age doesn't quite make sense. Sure, we'll do that. But I think you're right. The whole trope of the hidden child that the captain didn't know about or did know about but wasn't involved for whatever reason, that's been played. We've had that. We've already had a TNG episode where Picard thought he had a son, but it was this ruse that was done by Ferengi, who was trying to exact revenge on Picard. And was it Damon Bach? I know there was a Damon Bach Ferengi throughout somewhere in TNG, and I want to say he was the one that engineered this whole thing, Picard thinking he had a son. I just think the Picard having a child or the whole cloning topic, that's been played, that's been done. I don't know. Hopefully this will play out and pay off at some point, because right now I am having a hard time seeing why we had to have this plot where Picard has a child just that came from nowhere. I'm having a hard time with that. I don't think we needed that.
Okay, maybe well, we did forget one thing too.
What's that?
There is the whole part of this episode that Jack is a con man.
Sure, yeah, he's a con man, swindler, a Han Solo rogue type. Okay, yeah, no problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Beverly hasn't been conned into thinking this person is her kid and isn't, I mean.
Okay. I would think that for the most part, when you're pregnant and have a child, you know about it.
Yeah. But think about, okay. So think about this though. Like on a lot of the episodes of Star Trek, there are children that are living on board of the actual ships with their parents as a family unit. Yeah. However, Beverly, in a lot of instances, has gone to other locations, other worlds, other events, things like that. So is there a possibility that she had left the child somewhere, with someone, raised for a while, something happened, and now you get this other person coming back and saying that so we don't have there's no DNA testing stuff right now to show that Jack is legitimately Picard's. We don't know how this happened.
We need Maury Povich. That's what we need. We need Maury Povich. Yes, you are the father
too. Yeah, because we don't know what the history is either of, did she leave knowingly being pregnant, or was that she left and then found out she was pregnant? Because that's a big difference. And if she left under the guise of, hey, this guy and I have already tried a relationship and it didn't work. I mean, I want to know the reasoning why 20 years later, she has spent an entire lifetime and then gets in contact with Picard and he doesn't know about the kid. That's a really long time to go without. Why? That was my question the whole time. Why did she cut herself off, turn so rogue? There's something that's got to be hidden, so secret. There's something that's not adding up with this. And somehow, in some way, this kid plays into that. Mm-hmm. But was it that she cut off contact before or after she knew she was pregnant?
Well, I think, judging by the numbers that I had there, I think it would be safe to say that Well, here's my theory. Here's my thought, was that when she found out she was pregnant, at some point there was when she cut contact. I don't think the child had been, if the child had been born before she cut contact, then that means that nobody knew about the child, including Picard may have known of, or like how do I want to word this? Basically, the only person who would have known or even suspected was Picard. And no one else in that weird 2-year time frame knew anything. But here's the thing. I think that what probably makes the most sense in this whole thing, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense anyway, I think what makes the most sense is they had this relationship. They did this thing. She ends up, and I can't buy because I'm about to say she finds out she's pregnant and then skips town. I don't see a 55-year-old woman and a 76-year-old man being able to get pregnant naturally to the point where it's an accident or it's an oops. Or maybe they were trying. There's just something that doesn't
that brings me back
up.
to the cloning or whatever you want to say.
If you say cloning one more time, I will pistol whip you.
But
no cloning.
But here's the other thing though too. So in your calculations of how old he is, so we know that like he says, oh, she cut off contact with everybody 20 years ago. You're saying Jack might be 22. So doing that math, maybe she cut off contact with everybody but Picard at one point 22 years ago. And then, they were still secretly seeing each other for those last 2 years. So there could be this other, like the relationship was kind of dead to everybody else, but they were still having a relationship here or there. And maybe something happened during those 2 years that is what he might be privy to that no one else might know, that she also would know. Maybe there was some secret alliances and things going on. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe during that time there was some danger that she really felt. I don't know, whatever secret she's hiding or something that happened during that time that she was like, man, I have got to get away from, because she said, trust no one. So there's going to be somebody that we're going to think, oh yeah, this person was somebody on the inside, really close to all them, and they're the bad dude. So we don't know who that is.
Okay. So here's what I'll say in closing, because there's a lot of speculation here. We're just going to we're going to find out more. It's still early, but my takeaway from this whole discussion that we've had over the last 40 some minutes is that this entire thing could have been avoided if he just would have wrapped the thing up, wrap it up, keep the zipper up, something. I don't know. This is the kind of trouble you get yourself into when you have kids.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.